You're listening to Ricky and Jimmy on Relationships, the show where we uncover the thoughts and behaviors that are sabotaging your relationship and what you can do about it. Jimmy and I are passionate about sharing the ways that imperfect partners like you and I can shift unhealthy relational dynamics and create closeness. So welcome. Drop your defenses and open your heart, eyes, and ears. Let's learn how to be the best partner we can be together.
And we're back. This is episode, I don't actually need to keep track anymore. We've hit, I think this is 12 or 13. And at
we're
that
in
point,
the
who
teens.
cares?
We're in the teens. And today we're talking about why our partners change, maybe into something that we don't recognize, like a narcissist.
I get questions frequently that essentially say, and this question fascinates me so much, so I wanted to do a podcast on it with Ricky. I essentially get the question, things were fine. We were having a great relationship. And then either once we got married or once we kind of got settled down into a committed relationship, once I moved in, yada, yada, he or she kind of did a 180. And now I think they're a narcissist. Like they essentially ask, why did my partner change into a narcissist after we got married or after I moved in? And the question fascinated me.
My folks will say things like, they were so sweet and giving in the beginning, and now all they care about is themselves, and I'm not allowed to ask for anything. And was this person faking it in the beginning?
Yes.
That's what I get asked.
And those are very real questions, and we want to tackle this with all of the knowledge that we've, the tiny bit of knowledge that I've amassed, but it's a fascinating topic, and I think that there are some really great insights. So we're going to dive in. I took so many notes, which means that none of them will be talked about.
You'll be reading none of them? Yeah.
I'll be reading none of them because my brain is just firing on all cylinders. So expect nothing to be read off of this
this will get a little rambly. This will get a little interrupty. Yes.
But it'll also be entertaining.
Yeah. And informational and useful, hopefully.
Yeah. Can I give a quick
Fingers
disclaimer?
crossed.
Okay. I'm going to try to make this disclaimer as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you feel like you're in an abusive situation, if you feel like you're in an unsafe situation, this is not something we're giving advice to. You should obviously be getting safe. And if you feel like my partner is controlling me, manipulating me, abusing me, that's something we need you to be speaking to a professional about. You shouldn't be trying to get advice from us. Neither of us are counselors. Right. This is strictly from a educational standpoint of, did my partner really change into a narcissist, or is something else going on? I don't know what's happening, and we're just trying to help you make sense of what happens in long-term relationships or even short-term relationships where we feel like something has happened and they did a 180. What's going on?
Jimmy and I love this topic, and we read about it a lot. We research and we read articles, and we want to share the very best of what we learn with you guys. But like he said, if you're in a relationship where you feel like this may potentially be unsafe, or I don't trust my own judgments here, a counselor could be a really valuable resource for getting yourself into a state of mind where you feel like you can make good decisions about this. This podcast is probably not the place you should be going for decisions like that if things are feeling on the unsafe side.
Yeah, the next disclaimer we need to give is, so as much as we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, narcissism gets very confused with narcissistic personality disorder far too much. Everybody knows that we all have some narcissistic tendencies, but we get really careless by throwing out the label as my partner. I think my partner's a narcissist. That putting that label on someone is very dangerous from numerous standpoints that we've talked about already. But diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder is more rare than society or culture or I was going to say TikTok or whatever makes it seem. Would you agree? You would agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I touched on this a few episodes ago in our narcissism episode, probably, that true narcissistic personality disorder is going to manifest across multiple facets of that person's life. They're not going to be having a great time at work and a great time in their family, but reserve all of their narcissism. Totally. Yeah. Reserve all the narcissism for their romantic relationship. relationship, that's simply not how that works. So
they usually have no friends.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
job is always shaky because because no one can rely on them. They're lying consistently. But I'm sorry.
Can I drop a quick bomb on you before?
Please.
And I don't want to tangent too hard, but I was reading the other day, brace yourselves, listeners, that actually anxious attachers are more likely to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder than avoidant attachers. Is this my mic drop point?
Yeah, I'm not listening anymore.
If you are somebody who's listening and you have an avoidant leaning partner and you're conflating that with narcissistic personality disorder, I want you guys to know that those two aren't linked as often as anxious attachment is. So
Right.
you think you know what narcissistic personality disorder is, and you might be off.
Here's the last thing I want to say about this. You can say more, but I before we could dive in, I want to make a video about how we get so caught up in the labeling of, are they a narcissist? But what I want people to be more familiar with is simply asking the question, is this behavior hurting me? Is it damaging the relationship? Is it unsafe? Is it unhealthy? Is it controlling? Is it manipulative? I mean,
and what do they
Yeah.
do with that once they determine that? Like, I always like to encourage people to take back some of their power too, and say, if I determine that this person's behavior is hurtful, is abusive, perhaps, like, what am I doing to get myself safe, to get myself in a better
Yeah.
place? Am I going to seek out counseling? Am I reading and educating myself? Am I
Yes.
voicing to this person exactly how their behavior is affecting me?
Yeah. Now, like we said before, it's not safe to stand up to someone who's abusing you, so we don't encourage that. But it is important, if we're in a committed relationship with someone, that especially when we're learning about behaviors that are just like, there's things that just aren't okay. I mean, dismissing my feelings, invalidating me, calling me names, just contempt or criticism in general, name calling, none of those are okay. Never. So like, if someone's doing that consistently and never repairing and learning about, well, here's how I need to do this differently, or I'm so sorry, yada, yada, yada. If they're taking no accountability, those are just simply not okay. And your relationship is on a dangerous path. I mean, you might stay silent to keep the peace, but that doesn't mean that there's not a war happening in your relationship. So.
Sure. And I've seen too, also, if you do tell your partner, hey, when you called me a name the other day, because fights happen, I know that people listening
Absolutely.
There is some name calling happening, especially I hear about it in my DMs all the time. If you tell your partner, then when you called me a name the other night, that really hurt. There should be some emotional movement on their side. If there's not, that's what we're talking about. Maybe it being more of an abusive situation. But
sure.
I know that if I lost my cool and I called my partner a name and he told me later, like, it really hurt when you said that, that would cut to the soul, and I would be remorseful and be trying to make it up to him for sure.
Yep. And that's not to just completely discount. Some people are in relationships with narcissists and they need to, maybe they're not diagnosed, because what kind of narcissist will actually go and get diagnosed?
They don't.
I mean,
yeah,
really.
they don't. That's a
So we're not
thing.
completely discounting the fact that there are some people that are in those relationships. However,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of people that aren't in those relationships and are just applying that label, and that's also dangerous.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
should
let's
we
get
jump
into
in?
it. Yes.
So
yes.
I would love to start at the beginning of this relationship, because here's what I think happens if I was dissecting somebody that said, let's just say that they say things were fine and then we got married and now I just feel like they're a narcissist. I would ask them, one, did you confuse chemistry for intimacy? So I think so often in these relationships, if someone says that, I would ask them, did you guys start off real strong? Like, did you fall in love real quick? Did you move through this relationship really quick? And Ricky did a great job at explaining, in this was probably 6 episodes ago, but she talked about the stages that we should go through that are healthy when you're beginning a new relationship, and how to build trust slowly. And we should all remember that love shouldn't feel chaotic. Love shouldn't feel, we kind of get in these new relationships where we fall in love real fast and real hard. We're very sexual, very quick, and we feel like we're bonded, but we actually don't really know them and they don't really know us.
Yeah, that chemistry that feels like love will be charm and flirting and physical connection, and those kind of things can feel a lot like love and connection and intimacy, but they're not a solid foundation. And I think that's what you're trying to say, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
so look at your foundation first.
Look at your foundation. And the problem for me, I didn't know what a foundation looked like. So when you don't really know what a solid foundation is,
I didn't either.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
You're likely to just take anything. Well, I don't know what I don't know. And that's very dangerous. So
and chemistry feels amazing.
Chemistry feels amazing. And here's one thing. So when I was going through counseling, I learned about this term called limerence. Now, limerence is really interesting. Not everyone has limerence, but what limerence is it's that feeling of romantic infatuation. It's almost like an obsessiveness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we get into
I remember in college we'd say somebody was Twitter-pated, like in the Bambi movie, and you see the creatures just floating toward each other with hearts. That's what limerence feels like.
Now they did a study. I don't know the exact study, so I'm going to butcher it. They did a study where they they took an MRI of somebody's brain who was like in love or whatever, and thinking about that partner in the first infatuation stage. And the exact same areas light up in that partner that also light up in people who are addicted to drugs. Like,
wow. Yeah. Okay. So it feels like a drug addiction. I think I said that in my book too. Yeah. It's
anyone who has been in that, they know that, especially at the beginning, this feels like there's some addictive nature to this.
Sure.
The problem with that is things can get, we unintentionally ignore some red flags. We give them the benefit of the doubt when maybe we shouldn't. We don't really see their flaws. We kind of rationalize. It's easy to rationalize in that stage.
Can I throw one of my favorite quotes out? The
red flags quote.
Yeah, the red flag. Yeah, when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. That's in the limerence state.
Like, Yep. Now, here's what I want to say about limerence. Is limerence bad? And
not necessarily.
My answer would be no.
Yeah, I think it feels wonderful. It's not.
It feels wonderful. The only thing you need to do is check yourself and make sure that you are staying grounded. And you're like, I know that this person isn't perfect. Like, I know that this person is not. Sure, they might be right for me. We might actually be in love. The thing is, it's just like Ricky said before. You need to be building a foundation. A solid foundation. And in that limerence state, you need to slow your roll and not be making giant decisions. You'll see people who will marry each other after like 3 months. Like that's, you're marrying in a limerence state, not from a logical. Yep. And that's not to say that those marriages always fail. There's people that have married.
No, sometimes it's great, but I think a lot of times it's real bad. And it's
just not a great idea. It's not a great principle. We're all about giving you tools that are going to, set you up for success. And that's just not one of them.
Right.
So we just have to be very careful in that when we're in that stage. The other thing that I would want to ask that person is, did you actually talk about expectations? Did you both were you both actually able to have hard talks in those first couple of months as the relationship is progressing and you both really feel this in love feeling? Were you actually able to, because I wasn't. And a lot of people would probably say, well, no, we didn't really talk about our love languages, or we didn't really talk about what boundaries even were. We didn't really talk about our non-negotiables. I didn't really bring up what I needed in this relationship to feel valued and safe and prioritized.
Or in my experience, I'd been heavy into all the relationship and counseling books. So I was bringing a lot of that really great stuff up, and we were having some big conversations in boundary setting, and then also completely ignoring lots of red flags at the same time. So sometimes even just having big conversations is not necessarily, in the limerence state, you're still going to ignore giant red flags, even if some aspects are really good and feel very fitting.
Yeah. I think that all I'm trying to get at is like, were you able to tell them who you really are. Like, hey,
Oh,
you know
right.
what? You know what?
Yeah.
Like in my past relationships, these are the things that made me feel really neglected or unappreciated, or like, this is the type of relationship that I hope to have, you know, going forward. Because here's the biggest problem, and you'll be able to touch on this more because I know I've been talking so much, but especially when we have an insecure attachment, which 50% of us do. That's a pretty large percentage of
That's
the population.
a huge percentage.
50% of us have some sort of insecure attachment. And what do we all remember from our insecure attachment episodes that we've done, whatever? There's so much underlying fear there. There's a fear of vulnerability. There's a fear of actual closeness. There's a fear of being authentic. There's a fear of abandonment. There's a fear of losing our independence, or there's a fear of this person rejecting us. So what do? We put our walls up in some form or fashion. We protect ourselves. The problem is that doesn't help us in the long run. So
Right.
when you have that fear of abandonment, you're so much more unlikely to be able to have those conversations that talk about your expectations or talk about your needs or talk about your boundaries. And so when you don't do that, you're just setting yourself up for, you know, this relationship to kind of shift underneath your feet. You're kind of on sinking sand instead of, you're not on a solid foundation, because
Absolutely.
you're kind of just blowing in the wind, you know. Anyways,
And,
I
on
wanna
the
let you
other
talk
side
more
of the
about that.
coin, on the other side of the coin too, emotionally, sorry, Jimmy, you may have, did you hear my dog?
That was your dog?
you
I
hear
thought
that was
your,
my dog?
I thought that was your phone. And
No,
but I was like, you're
she just
filming on
did
your phone.
No, she just did a huge loud stretch, and I was like, that definitely came through. Okay,
I'm sorry. Pick
it's
up
okay.
your point.
Ugh. On the other side of the coin, while the more anxious folks might be afraid to reveal their true selves during that fear of abandonment stage, the more avoidant people or emotionally unavailable people, their fear of abandonment may make them show up as the best boyfriend or girlfriend in the whole world until they realize that they can't maintain that level of effort because it's unrealistic at best.
For sure. I think that, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm just going to speak from personal experience, but I was scared to lose something. So I wasn't showing up. I wasn't,
showing up,
I guess,
showing
like
up
authentically, like showing up,
right.
like I'm able to talk about my feelings. And
Yeah.
one thing that I'll touch on is like, this kind of goes to emotional availability. So like, we have to answer the question, especially when we're in that, if we're asking the question, why did my partner change into a narcissist once I got married? Or, you know, why did they do a 180? We have to ask ourselves the question, were we both emotionally available? Like, was there a pattern of emotional availability? Because that took a long time for me to realize that, like, no, there wasn't for either of us. Like,
same.
there wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will equate emotional availability with the willingness to be in a relationship, right? And it's not the same thing, because I'm sure, just like you, Jimmy, I look back at the beginning parts of my relationship and I was actually incredibly emotionally 100%. Unavailable because 100%. I was unwilling to talk about anything that bothered me at all.
Yep.
That's emotional unavailable. My partner did not have access to any negative feelings that I had because I was too afraid to bring them to the forefront. Emotional unavailability.
Yeah. And what we don't realize is how damaging that is when one or both partners is just kind of like unintentionally emotionally unavailable.
Yeah. And unaware. That's
completely
even,
unaware.
Even more dangerous.
Yeah. Self-reflection was the first step in all this journey, where I was like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Wait a second. How am I showing up here? I wanted to say, I just looked up for you too. The average limerence time frame.
Should I guess? Can I guess?
If you want to, please do. Yeah.
Well, my guess would be,
I think you'll be surprised.
It can go, the research says that it can go all the way up to 2 years, which is wild,
It's a huge range. It can last as little as 3 months or up to 3 years, this says. says the
bonkers to
average
think
being
about.
18 months. Isn't that insane? The average time that someone experiences limerence is about 18 months. So for that
Yeah.
first year and a half, you may not actually be looking at the person through the regular glasses, through the glasses that show their smudges and flaws.
And I wonder what the average time that people get married is. And in this culture, it's a little
can
bit
look it
it's a
up.
little bit later. It's a little bit later, but we know
Yeah.
plenty of people who get married right at about a year and a half to 2 years, don't they?
Oh,
And then
I can look it up real quick while we
and then
transition.
and then their partner changes on them, and
Mm-hmm.
they're wondering why.
I have to know. I'm looking at
I was going to say now I feel like, how am I going to edit this? It'll just cut to you saying, and the average.
Yeah, that's okay. How long do people date before getting married? Okay, most couples date for 2 or more years before getting engaged. So
Yeah.
that's hopeful, right? That
Yeah. Oh,
tells
yeah.
me that they've probably made it out of the rose-colored glasses time.
The problem is once you date for 2 years, you get to where you feel like you're locked in. Does that make sense? Like you feel
Yeah.
like I've put in so much to this. And here's the other problem. Let's say your limerence lasted for 18 months. So it's been 6 months without it. In that 6 months that you haven't been in limerence anymore, the relationship is kind of shifting, and I think for most people, they feel like there's a term in poker called pot committed. Like you're kind of committed to this relationship. You've put too much money in. Like I
Have
know
you
I
heard
still
of the
have money.
sunk cost fallacy?
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
that's the exact problem that
Same
we're
thing.
talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The sunk cost fallacy, guys, is the phenomenon whereby a person's reluctant to abandon a strategy that they made because they are heavily invested in it. They say, look at all these years and emotion and time I've invested in this person. It must be really important to me. And if I jump out now, all that time is wasted. And really the fallacy there is that it's much more wasteful to continue in something that's not working for you. If it's truly not working for you.
Correct. And we can talk about later. We'll talk about a little later, like how do we really diagnose, like, is this salvageable? What can we change? And what are the hopes that
Yeah,
this
we've got
relationship
strategies
will
for
change? Yeah.
determining that. So just sit tight.
I guess what my hope, I wrote some notes down on emotional availability, and you'll have to touch on these with me because they're just, I didn't actually get them from anywhere. I just kind of threw them out of my noggin.
Okay.
But clearly the ability to talk about our emotions, fears, insecurities, but also to be able to receive your emotions, like to reciprocate in a way. Like this should be a back and forth. It shouldn't just be one person talking about their fears and the other person just,
Yeah. And I want to say that can take practice to master.
Oh, it takes so much practice.
Yeah. Like don't feel bad if you're bad at it or if your partner's really bad at it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you or the relationship are doomed, because I know that I really had to learn to receive my partner's complaints without feeling immediately defensive. And he had to learn to listen to mine without immediately trying to fix things.
Yeah, 100%. The ability to have difficult conflicts and stay present. That doesn't mean that we don't still have work to do when it comes to like validation and empathy and stuff like that. But you should be able to tell that they care about the fact that you're hurt. They're able to take some sort of accountability. That doesn't mean apologizing for things that you didn't do. It just means like, if I unintentionally hurt you because I made fun of you at the party, like I care that you felt hurt.
Or at the very, very base level, you are expressing sadness, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, at the bare minimum, we should be able to do that, unless we have some sort of wound that we're not really.
It can be really
aware of.
hard to hear your
really
partner
hard.
say
So
the thing
hard.
that you did made me sad. That stirs up a
It
lot
takes
of fear.
So much maturity. Yeah,
it does.
But
it took practice for us too.
It takes so
and I.
much practice. Yeah. What else did I write? So obviously that they don't have, an internal fear of intimacy or closeness or vulnerability. And that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on is like, we should be on alert especially when we're dating, that like, is this and if we care about all this stuff, we're listening to the podcasts, we're trying to grow our emotional maturity, we're trying to learn about emotional intelligence, we're trying to set ourselves up for the best chance at success, because we know that, just like Stan talked about, like we're both out here on a tightrope together. And so like, we need to learn how to do this together. We need to like stay focused on each other. And one of the things that he talked
because
about,
my behaviors affect my partner, and my partner's behaviors affect me.
Yes. And that's not codependency. That's that's interdependency. That's real.
And it's healthy. Yeah.
It's healthy. Yeah.
Yep.
He talked about, we're both out here on a tightrope. So everything you do affects, like we're both holding the pole, the steady pole. So like, but what I wanted to talk about is we should be on the lookout for, is my partner capable of vulnerability, and do they have a fear of intimacy? So what are some clues that jog off the top of your head of like, maybe my partner is afraid of being vulnerable, or maybe my partner is afraid of intimacy? Yeah.
A lot of partners will straight up tell people that I don't do tough conversations. I don't, I hear that a lot from men. I hate to pigeonhole men with that, but a lot of men will say right off the bat, like, I don't like talking about my feelings, and that's just that. So sometimes a partner will tell you, or the always popular,
or they say feelings are useless. A lot of men will say,
they
like,
might diminish the importance of feelings.
Stupid. Yeah.
Or the ever popular, I've been hurt in the past, as a reason for not wanting to dive too deeply into things. That's that's some hallmark emotional unavailability for sure.
And then when we talk about some of those situationships, like if you're in a situationship where you feel like you're both in love, or you feel like you're getting along great, but he or she doesn't want to put labels on the relationship. They don't want that they're afraid of commitment, or they just simply don't want it with you. They don't want commitment with you. Yeah. You have to be very careful that you're not just staying in situationships and then expecting...
That you're not dating their potential, right?
Thank you. Yeah, you're not dating their potential. You're not trying to win them over with like maybe I can convince them that I'm worthy enough to prioritize. That's so dangerous.
Or waiting them out, waiting out their time to be ready. Or like you just said, proving that you're so good that you'll change their mind on that. Yeah. It's a dangerous territory to be in, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to touch on when it comes to like someone where they were in love, things were great, and then now a year later or 2 years later or whatever, now they actually think their partner is a narcissist. I mean, like those are two polar opposite things. So what could be happening is either the limerence stage wore off and now you're finally starting to see, or they really were being loving, and they really were. Now, maybe there were some signs that they weren't really good at vulnerability. They weren't good at emotional availability. They didn't really care about learning about all this stuff. They didn't really care about deepening your bond together. Sometimes they kept things superficial. The conversations never really got deep about their childhood or feelings or fears. They didn't really care about that stuff. But I think what can happen is they were still sweet and they were still loving, but really there was a fear in there. And if we're talking about insecure attachment, eventually that fear is coming out. And when you press too hard on, let's say that you do get married, but then after that honeymoon phase wears off, now they're pulling away. Now they're self-centered. Now they are distant and disconnected. They don't really care about connection. What could be happening is it seems like they're doing a 180 into narcissism, but really they're just terrified of actual closeness and vulnerability.
Yes. That you'd see that a lot in some hardcore avoidant attachment too. The anxious attachers listening will understand what I say, that primal fear that comes up when you sense distance or your partner drifting away. Avoidance will actually feel that exact fear when things start getting closer and more committed. Maybe the avoidant just got married. Maybe you just moved in together. Maybe you finally slapped a label on the relationship. Those kind of things are strangely terrifying for them. So they will close off and shut down. And they do get accused of narcissism a lot when really, like Jimmy just said, they're grappling with fear in those situations.
Now, that doesn't discount your hurt. It is hurtful
not at
when
all.
somebody
It's very
neglects
hurtful.
you, especially when it feels like they were tricking you, or what's the word?
like a bait and
Fooling
switch,
you.
right?
They were bait and switching me, and of course it feels like that. It should. You would be wild if you didn't feel like that. So you are being neglected. Like you're not crazy. You're not, but we have to remember that. Like, this is who they actually are. They're not like they're terrified of closeness. Now
understanding
can that,
the mechanisms behind it too can help us let go of some anger that we might have toward them for doing that.
Or just change our approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it did for me. Partners in the past that I thought, what the heck? Why did they change? I didn't deserve that. I was so good to them for so long. Knowing that they may have been acting from a place of fear, or maybe a place that they didn't even understand was fear. They just shut down and didn't even know why.
Absolutely.
Knowing that they weren't just out to hurt me on purpose really helped me to let go of wanting revenge or really needing to hear them apologize. I was able to let go of that, knowing why.
Now, if you're in a dating situation and you're not married yet, I will always tell Ricky's story. I butcher it every time, but she doesn't mind telling you that she was the anxious and her boyfriend was the avoidant. And then eventually she came to a place where she realized, I'm not going to sacrifice on certain non-negotiables. And she had the self-respect and self-worth, and she valued her time and her, future relationships enough to where she told Chris, I'm not going to continue in this relationship. If you don't want to meet certain needs, that's perfectly fine. But that means that we are not going to be compatible. We cannot. And
right.
I'm sure I'm butchering it, but
no,
that's a key part to the story. I mean, that's a key part to understanding all this stuff, is paying attention to all this.
Yeah. And I didn't say it as a threat. I think that's really important, because I get asked about that story a lot. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't
because I bring it up every single time.
I know, that's all right. It's a good story. It's not like, if these are the ways that I'm unhappy and if you don't shape up, it wasn't like that at all. It was like, I've noticed these differences in the ways that we seem to want to engage. And because of that, I think it's looking like I'm going to have to exit, because if you'd like to continue like that, hey, I want that for you, but I don't want that for me.
And that's just so powerful.
I wish you the best.
I feel like every safe, healthy relationship starts with that. Starts with at least the ability to say, this is what I need to feel safe and prioritized and loved in my relationships. And the other person says, this is what I need to feel safe and prioritized. And if it doesn't match, y'all just shouldn't be together. It's not that difficult. Right. And you can still love that person, and it's sad and yada, yada. But
Or Chris and I had a lot of things that didn't match up well at all. And because of our motivation to be together, we've sat down together and found compromise on those categories. It wasn't just, we're not each other's identical mirror. We said we still love each other so much and want to be together. Let's find out how to make these things that look like they won't work.
And that's what Dr. Tatkin was talking about, where if you love someone, then there's a mutual sacrificial element where
mutual. I love. Thank you for saying mutual sacrificial.
And what he said is, at one point he said, and this was probably, I probably didn't even catch on to it, but the more I think about it, it was so wise. He said, both people have to almost be like excited about this, where both like one person can't feel like they're abandoning themselves by sacrificing for the other one. So if you said this is what I need, Chris can't just say, okay, fine, I'll do it. No,
that's appeasing, right?
Dr. Tatkin would be like, no, that is not the way this should be done, and nor will that help anything. He's like, no, he has to be like, okay, I'm on board with that. Like, I agree with that, and I'm going to pursue that.
Oh, and hey, Jimmy, from the Christian perspective, it would be to give with a joyful heart, or else it doesn't count, right?
I I don't know about that one.
You don't know about
I give
Oh.
from a non-joyful heart all the time, and it counts.
Oh no, I will look. I'll have to look that one up for you because it was
Yeah.
it was an old favorite of mine growing up. That
Yeah.
you have to give with a joyful heart, or else apparently it doesn't count in the eyes of the Lord.
I'm
Something like
sure
that.
there is something. Yeah, you know what? That's funny that I don't recall a certain verse. We'll have to get back to each other on that one.
Yeah, check that one out.
Yeah, because I don't think that it's necessary, and I
Really?
I would love to be
Wow.
proved wrong.
I know. I
from
was like,
scr-
oh,
from
the Bible might
scriptures.
disagree, but I'll look it up for you. Yeah.
I think that there's an element of sacrifice where it's okay if you don't necessarily want to do it, but you
Well,
but
I
you
think
understand that it's in your best interest.
Yeah,
like,
I think there's some
love.
interpretation there too.
Yeah,
For
I'm
example,
sure.
I hate cooking. I hate it so much, so much. But I love making Chris something that he likes, and that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I hate every single stir of the pot. I do, but
Yeah.
when I see his eyes light up, then I'm like, okay, I can give with a joyful heart. That it's something.
Yeah.
It's a phrase that I took into my adulthood because I love it.
that.
If I served him that soup and I hated and I still hated it as he was eating it, doesn't count, you know? But
Yeah,
I can
there's a
hate
big
the
difference,
Yeah, I
obviously,
can
yeah.
hate the process, but then still love what results from it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and
Mm-hmm.
so I can tell you, I'm rarely just sacrificing from a joyful heart, like
I
all
see.
day long, just all day long, breaking up fights, making lunches. Any
Yeah.
stay-at-home moms out there, like they know, like I'm pouring love into these children, and I'm sacrificing for them, but
Yeah.
there's not always like a joyful heart. That doesn't mean that I'm not extremely grateful and yada
Got
yada
it.
yada. But
It's
so
something
there's a-
else.
It's
You
an
describe
interesting
it
nuance.
differently.
But I'm still going to look up the verse. We'll probably have a private. I'll be calling Ricky tomorrow and be like,
Yeah.
okay, I found all the
Let's talk
verses that you were talking
this.
about. Okay, what should we transition to now? Because
yeah.
I did want to touch on real quick for some strange reason. I wanted to write down kind of some red flags, just really quickly, red flags of if you weren't married to somebody, like, well, how do I really know if they're not emotionally available, or how do I really know if this is like a red flag for you don't like that? You
Yes,
don't like
no,
those red
no.
flags? Okay.
Please do that, and then maybe I will tackle the what
Yes.
does it look like in a relatively good or healthy relationship when that change has happened. But
I
I'll
love
hit
that.
that after your
These
go
are
for
really
it.
simple. So like we talked about in the beginning, name calling, if they're putting you down, if they call you names like crazy. Or
And you said these
worse.
are red flags.
These are huge red flags of if there's no signs that they recognize this as toxic, destructive behavior,
Got it. Okay.
you should be, this is hallmark either emotional availability at minimum and potentially,
Unavailability. You said.
I'm sorry, emotional unavailability. And you should be seriously considering, this is not normal behavior where it's just like, oh, all relationships have conflict or everybody
Got
fights
it.
with their partner.
Okay,
No,
these are good to know.
Name
Yeah.
calling, putting you down, calling you names is never okay. Like I said before, if there's just no depth to the conversation, they don't want to get too personal. They kind of shy
Yeah.
away from. If you're like, tell me about your childhood, or tell me
like,
about
I don't wanna talk
what
about
happened.
that.
They're like,
Surface
I
level.
don't know,
Yeah.
surface level stuff. Or if you're like, or one of the big tells of like somebody who just doesn't want to go deeper is like, if you're empathizing with somebody, like the waiter drops a bunch of drinks and you're like, oh, that must really, and they're like, you know, like who I don't want to, like, who cares about that person? Why
Like
are you
a
wasting
noticeable lack of empathy.
Yeah. Very dangerous.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like your partner has empathy for other people, I can promise you eventually they're not going to have empathy for you.
Right. You'll be the recipient of that eventually.
You will eventually be. We talked about before that they don't have a good support system outside of you. They don't have good relationships outside of you.
Yeah.
If they can't compromise and they need to be right, being right is the most important thing. They will fight forever to be right. Obviously, we talked about not taking accountability or admitting any wrong.
Yeah.
Their words don't match their actions.
That's a big one. Yep.
And then we talked about just kind of overall avoiding commitment.
Do you have
those are-
controlling
yeah.
behavior too on there?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
yeah. I wrote there's some things, because everybody's always fascinated with narcissism. So, well, they're like, well, how does that differ from narcissism? So let's go over some really quick narcissism. Exaggerated self-importance. They have to make everything about them. Everything always comes back to them. They will lie to maintain an illusion that they're the best at something. They're the smartest in the room. They always feel a sense of entitlement. You are here
You're
to
a
serve
tool
me.
for
You're a
my,
tool.
yeah.
So if you feel like you're in a relationship and you're just simply a tool for their pleasure, for their, like their pride, to lift them up, to their, that's a big problem. That's not normal behavior. You should be talking to somebody about that. If you ever feel controlled, manipulated, gaslit, if you feel like they're just they're making you question your reality. Everything is, no, I didn't say that. That didn't happen that way. You're crazy. If you're consistently questioning yourself, like, maybe I'm the crazy one. I get emails all the time like, am I crazy? My partner keeps calling me crazy. Am I crazy? I'm like, most likely not. If your partner's calling you crazy, like, that's not a good thing. Like,
no. And it's a crazy making thing,
Very much so,
being told that you're crazy does make you question, like, am I?
Totally does.
Yeah.
So you should be concerned. I'm going to quit talking in 15 seconds. You should be concerned if you're consistently questioning things. Am I allowed to feel that? Am I allowed to bring that up? I mean, are they just going to invalidate me? Should I even talk about that? Is it even worth talking to them about my feelings? Those are all huge red flags if you're in a dating relationship that you will most likely, you might have even gone into where you're emailing me. Like, they changed. I think they're a narcissist. So
those are, and you're saying with all of that in a dating relationship, when those things are present, maybe this isn't a situation where you should be trying to salvage and work through this. Is that 100%. What you're saying there?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Or a bare minimum, you should be consulting a professional and asking them, like, can you help me navigate? Because I think I need to leave this unsafe relationship.
Exactly. I love it. Is this a good part for us to transition to? Let's say you've been married for a long time, or you're with somebody who in many situations is very caring and empathetic, but in other situations displays some narcissistic traits that are bothersome and troubling you. You're losing sleep over it. I would like to talk now a little bit about reasons why you or your partner may not be trying as hard in the relationship as in the beginning. That's a big part of why we might see a stark change in how they were in the beginning and how they are later. I know a lot of people who have not necessarily been in really long-term relationships. My longest term relationship was 12 years. And I know that during that 12 years, we had a lot of ups and downs where sometimes it seemed like we were trying really, really hard. And sometimes life got a little hard and we weren't on our A game with each other. That is kind of a normal thing in relationships. If you're out buying a book that says, like, why is my partner a narcissist? But they're also, like, sometimes being extremely loving, but they've got traits that are killing you inside. That can be a kind of normal thing. I would think that coaches and relationship therapists see that stuff all the time. And there's a lot that we can do about that. Sometimes it's simply that we've started to take our relationship for granted. When relationships are very long-term and people start to get really comfortable, the effort naturally does start to go down. That's not 100%. To say, and that's not to say that you can't turn that around, but I think almost everybody is guilty of getting a little bit too comfortable and not putting as much effort forth. That can look, when you're hurting on the other side, like somebody is this selfish monster who doesn't care about your needs anymore. You might see your partner not taking care of their appearance as much. They might not be making an effort to do fun things with you. They might not be sexually approaching as much anymore. They might be turning down your approach efforts for sex. And that's when we get a lot of people saying, like, I don't know what happened. They used to be so sweet and now they don't care at all about anything that's important to me. Not narcissism, maybe just the natural ebb and flow of effort in long-term relationships. What do you think of that, Jimmy? I see you nodding a lot. Is that
you touched on? I mean, I can't believe that we're 50 minutes in, and I haven't said the words complacency, because
complacency.
that is so important, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I hope somebody's still listening. But
Frank is. He has to. He's still
Frank
here.
is. I got an email from an actual Frank, a guy.
I did too. I did too.
And he's like, I love the
Frank.
podcast. I'm like, oh, I love you, Frank. So we get so complacent. Ricky and I were just talking about this. We weren't even planning on putting it in this podcast, but we'll have to do a whole nother episode on it, where it's
complacency.
Like this thing only works when both of us are like putting in the work. Like it takes work. That doesn't mean that it's always so difficult. When I say that, I feel like there's so many, especially men, where they're just like, oh, this shouldn't be so much work. Like, why, you sound like my wife, where she just wants me to put in so much work.
Yeah.
What happens is it should be like working out. Like when you're working out, you kind of reach a level where you just need to maintain. You just need to do a little bit. It's not like you're having to go at the gym
marathons every day.
Yeah, you're not marathoning. Like it's just maintenance level. Like, but it's so important when you don't do that maintenance level work.
Yeah. At the risk of being too self-revelatory here on the podcast.
Oh, I've never heard that word before. It sounded so
Oh,
smart.
really? Okay. Like I'm oversharing. At the risk of I don't want to overshare here, but the idea that the relationship shouldn't be so much work is one of the reasons my ex-husband and I got divorced. Because we looked at each other and said, this is hard, and maybe it shouldn't be. And we didn't realize that sometimes long-term relationships, the effort does get a little hard.
Oh my gosh.
And that's normal.
It's so normal. I don't want to interrupt you because you're doing so good, but
thanks.
Spot on about complacency. And
I
mean, I put my marriage on autopilot. So many people put their marriages, long-term relationships on autopilot, and they think that they're just going to, ride it out.
Yeah.
They're just going to coast on their... Oh, well, we've been together for so long. Like, no, this thing takes...
It still takes
effort.
effort.
Takes effort.
When things get kind of comfortable and we're looking at the other person not putting in the effort that they used to, that's when we start to build up resentment. And resentment, when a relationship starts to not live up to our hopes and dreams, it kind of makes our lack of effort feel justified. Sometimes it's kind of tasty and delicious
100%.
to suddenly pull our efforts back and see, like, I don't have to be as loving as I used to. I know that that's especially a trait of the anxiously attached too. Sometimes we will pull our efforts back in order to get back at somebody or make them regret or miss us.
And it's also protective in a way. We're really...
It can be.
We start to get scared that I'm not, why would I keep putting myself out there? I mean, if we think about being vulnerable, it's, why would I continue being vulnerable with somebody who's not, either that's dismissing me or invalidating me or isn't safe? I mean,
totally.
It doesn't make sense that you would want to do that. So, but there is an element of manipulation, can be an element of manipulation as well. Like you were saying.
Absolutely. Yep. I think, are we allowed to call him our boy Stan now? Maybe?
I would love that.
I remember I tried to say that
Ricky
in an
did that
earlier
on
episode.
one episode.
Yeah.
She said,
but now that we've met him and he was so wonderful, I think he's our boy.
Us.
Yeah, I think so. And I wanted to ask, what would our boy Stan say to do in that situation when we both are feeling resentful and we're both pulling back our efforts to kind of get back at the other person and being a little protective and lack of vulnerability? I think he would say that's the time when we both need to be putting more effort in, even when it's hard.
100%. He would say that you both should be able to influence each other. If only one person is influenceable, meaning like he at one point he said, I can tell my wife and she can tell me, like, hey, stop doing that, or hey, start doing that. And there's no hard feelings. It's like, oh, okay.
And they do it. That's
and
beautiful.
I'm not saying that's like, I understand that a lot of people are like, well, that seems a little controlling. But just think about it from a healthy standpoint. If somebody says like, if someone says, I don't really like it when you do that. It makes me feel disrespected.
The reason there's no coercion there or manipulation is because they are both willing
reciprocal.
parties. Yeah, they're both willing parties. They've said, I happily relinquish some of my ability to veto this, and I want your direction on some of this stuff.
Love that. I want your direction. I love to say in my videos, like, we should get to the point where we invite and encourage our partner to be like honest about what's going on in their inner world. That doesn't mean that they should yell at us or criticize us. We've already established those are destructive behaviors, but we should want to know.
And it still might be hard to hear, because I told my partner.
It's extremely hard to hear. I hate hearing.
I told my partner not too long ago, I said, and he was thrilled. I was like, I want to know when something bothers you. And he's like, really? And I was like, ooh, this is going to be rough, because now he's going to start telling me all the things that he's upset about. And I thought it was going to be all rainbows and butterflies. He would bring up a concern and I would easily be able to change it. But unfortunately, sometimes the things that he brings up that are bothering him is stuff that I really don't want to change. And that is tough. But I've invited him to speak up about it. And so I have to accept some of that influence.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean we're saying abandon yourself just because your partner says.
No, and sometimes we sit down and have a conversation about, I say, hey, I hear about this thing that's bothering you. Let me explain to you why this is something that I'm not going to be able to 100% change. And maybe we can find compromise in the middle. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. At the end of the day, it really just comes down to kindness.
Yeah.
Can we all just be kind?
Well, ideally.
All right. Hit me with some more tools, because I'm fascinated with what you got.
Cool. So I saw something online that I absolutely loved. This is not going to be a fun one to hear, but if you think about it happening, you're like, yeah, that might actually work. The internet said to try taking on a chore that your partner really appreciates. And I'm telling you, it might be something you hate. It might be Ricky at 5 o'clock at night stirring a pot of soup. But you know what? That lights him up. Joyfully, and giving it with joy. No, it lights him up. When I intentionally take on chores that I know are really important to him, I find him suddenly transition magically, like Cinderella's carriage, into someone who's very giving. Very giving.
I love that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a quick story? Because I know
Please
every
do.
time I say I'm going to tell a quick story, it ends up being like 15 minutes. This one's not going to, it's going to be really quick. I asked Emily that exact question the other day, and I hated her answer. So this is good.
Wait, what was the question that you asked her?
I said, what's one chore that I can take off of, like, not just your plate, but like the family's plate? Or what's one thing that I can do that can become mine?
What was it?
And you
I'm dying now.
and I want it to be something that you really, it fills your love tank. Not just like, because I do certain things all the time that don't fill her love tank, and that bothers me. I'm like, why am I doing this? You know?
No, totally.
And she's like, oh, I just don't care about certain things. And I'm like, okay, well, can I stop doing this? She's like, no. So, okay. So the thing she said, it would really fill my love tank. And I was like, yes. I can't wait to do this thing.
Yeah.
She's like, I would love it if, like, once a quarter you cleaned the carpets. Like, you got the carpet cleaner. And I was like, I'm not cleaning. I was like, I don't want to clean the carpet. I was like, I thought you were going to say, like, just empty the lawn, or, and, just whatever.
It's
like,
always something hard.
I'm like, babe, you want me to clean the carpet? She's like, oh yeah, I would love if you clean the carpet. I'm like, fine.
I know.
So I haven't joyfully done that yet, but the quarter hasn't come up yet.
Oh no, I love it. And I am expecting in a future episode for you to let us all know that you've cleaned all the carpets.
I'm going to do it just to see the look on her face when she comes home. She's going to be like, she's going to, that'll be a good night for the Knowles household, if you know what I mean.
I want to say Chris's ask was a day where all the meals were not only planned, but prepared, and he didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
It's like a death sentence for me. For somebody that doesn't like to cook.
Yeah, because he knows you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and he even said, like, part of it is knowing that that's hard for you, and you would make that effort for me. I would just be like, wow, she did something really hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yuck.
love
Relationships, man.
We are no longer in limerence, gentlemen and ladies.
No. I cooked so many things when in the limerence state. I was like Betty Crocker in that first year.
Yeah.
And
I
see,
love to cook. Yeah.
oh my gosh, I just exploring these new recipes. I didn't like it before, but now I do. And he might have said, what happened? Ricky totally changed.
For sure.
That's limerence, man.
Yep, that is. Yep. All right, hit me with some more tools.
Okay. I think did you touch on this one? The internet said we can add a teamwork that plays to each other's strengths. Maybe you love yard work and hate the dishes, and you can talk to your partner about like, baby, you don't have to worry about the yard anymore.
Yeah.
I got it. That's my thing. And I did that. That's my example because I love yard work, and Chris hates yard work. And I said, I'm doing the yard work from here on out.
Oh,
and I
nice.
actually, I think I've told you guys several times that he doesn't text like at all. But I got a text the other day from Chris that said,
did it have an emoji?
It did not have an emoji, but it said, babe, you look so sexy mowing the lawn right now. And I'm telling you, you guys, that's the thing. He hasn't touched the yard since we've lived together. And I think he really appreciates that. And I love it. So when you can find teamwork that plays to each other's strengths. For example, here, Chris loves to cook. Like really likes it. So I have had to cook some things here and there. But for the most part, we kind of outsource those tasks to each other, and it's great being able to feel like a team, but also not do as much stuff that we hate.
Yep. We don't plug a lot of, we're not we don't get paid to plug anything, but I hear the book Fair Play is really good. You might have, I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't read that one.
One of us needs to actually read it.
Yeah.
I haven't actually read it, but people keep
it.
telling me, and it's the concept that's so important. It's just being in a healthy enough relationship to be able to sit down and say, what are you going to take on as your tasks? And what am I going to take on as my tasks? So there's no confusion. I mean, when somebody doesn't do their task, I don't know why I'm bringing this up because it triggers me, but you know how men always think that they're pretty much all they need to do is make sure the trash got taken out that night. Yeah. But if you don't take the trash out and then it's just overflowing or whatever, then that someone can say, hey, what happened? That's your job.
Yeah, and I can see
and
it.
There shouldn't be confusion. There shouldn't be
Do you find in your household too that the mutual chores are the areas where we have more conflict? Because
100%.
Yeah,
obviously.
because when the thing that both of us are supposed to do doesn't get done, it's suddenly two people pointing at each other like, was it you? Was it you? Was it me? Was it?
Oh, absolutely. Or one person's just doing that particular mutual chore too much
and getting resentful.
And they're so resentful.
Yeah.
Here's the only thing I want to say about resentment is once you start feeling resentful, and we can go into what does that kind of look like, but we kind of all know once we start feeling resentful towards our partner, we start painting them in a negative light. Whereas before we might have given the benefit of the doubt. Now we don't do that anymore. Yeah. Now we kind of assign malintent. They didn't do the dishes because they don't care about me and my, they don't. Oh no, who was that?
The cat.
We can pause. We can pause. Well, if it's a cat, it's fine, obviously.
It's fine. The cat found her food and the big bag and knocked it over. So it's cool. Yeah. We're fine. The people love the animal stuff, actually, that when it happens, I get emails. They do. I get emails, and they're like, I heard your cat in the background, and it made me so happy.
Oh, that's
the
funny.
internet loves pets. So, okay, continue.
The problem with resentment. So, we know what it feels like. We should at least know what it feels like because it's so important in marriage. But but one of the biggest problems is once you're starting to feel that, and you don't feel like you can talk to your partner about it. That's a huge red flag. You need to be in front of a third party, if you go to church, in front of the pastor, whatever. You just need to say, "Hey, I'm starting to feel resentful because of X, Y, and Z, and I obviously don't want to feel resentful, but and I don't think the solution is just to don't feel resentful. No, there's clearly an area where you feel like you're being neglected or you feel like your boundaries aren't being respected. Yeah. That stuff has to be discussed.
Yeah. And it's a kind of high level.
It's high level.
It's kind of high level talking about it. So if you don't feel ashamed if you need to see a counselor in order for you guys to have a really level, safe and kind conversation about it.
I wish Emily and I would have been just more honest, but both of us, like earlier on when things were conflicty and we were both just avoiding it, because I wish one of us would have been like, listen, like you're going to counseling with me. We're going to talk about this in front of a third party. Yeah. That's healthy. I mean, that's
super healthy.
That's very super healthy. I mean, the opposite of that is you could just do what I did and build up a ton of resentment and eventually either want to get divorced or cheat. Like,
right.
Because you never dealt with your resentment. You never dealt with your needs, you feeling like your needs weren't being prioritized or honored or respected, or you felt neglected. I mean, there's tons of different things, but all I'm trying to say is this stuff is super important. Like, do not take the avoidance approach.
Right. We've said before in a podcast, and I would love to say this again, the step that you guys make to get yourself in front of a counselor doesn't mean the relationship's crumbling and on the verge of divorce. Not at all. And I know that when I was married and we went and saw a counselor, as we walked in, both of us heard the what's the death knell, right? Is that the toll, like the bells? Yeah. It was like, It didn't feel like we were walking in there to save our relationship. It felt like we were walking in there because this was a last ditch effort in a dying thing.
Isn't that so sad?
And it's so sad because now I know that counseling can be the very thing that injects health back into a relationship.
Yeah. This is why people should get counseling in that limerence. Like, in that limerence. Like, like you should be like, hey, this is lovely. Let's go talk to somebody about how to keep it lovely. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's but nobody does that except for like one person. And that person will have a great relationship. But anyways, do you have anything else for us? Did I freeze? I'm sorry.
You froze badly, but it could be me too, I guess. Are we? Okay.
You never cut out.
Oh, good. Okay, good. The internet also says that we could maybe...
I like how you say the internet.
The internet. Well, I just want to make...
Because nobody wants to sort... Like, it's like, well, from Psychology Today, who cares? Like, the internet says...
I promise you guys, I'm getting this information from therapists who are writing articles and not just Joe Blow. They're articles written by therapists.
Sometimes Joe Blow has great information too.
Sometimes, but sometimes he diagnoses everyone as narcissists when they're not. So there's that too.
True.
So the therapists on the interwebs say you could perhaps designate one evening a week as a full effort night. That might be a date night where you both do yourself up to the nines. It might be, if you're not able to go out, it might be a night in where you're giving each other foot massages, or one person is cooking the household's favorite meal and the other person is doing all the cleanup afterwards. A full effort, at least nobody can do full effort 7 nights a week. But you could probably do full effort one night a week, and that might go pretty far. Please do, yeah.
Because it's so important to have those conversations. Like I talked about earlier, where we never had conversations about expectations or love languages.
Right.
One great question to ask even before you do any of this is, what does full effort look like for you? Or I love that. Or what would you want? What would you even want as
Jimmy,
full effort?
Sometimes I worry that we don't reveal enough of ourselves on this podcast. What would a full effort night?
Too much.
Do you? Well, let's reveal a little bit more. What would a full effort night look like for you? If Emily wanted to make your evening and you got to pick, what would the best evening ever for Jimmy look like? And what do you think hers would look like? It might look very different from yours.
Yeah. So,
very different.
I don't even know if I'd be included in Emily's full effort.
You know what? That's sometimes I know a couple who they were trying to really treat each other, and her request was that he leave her alone for 3 hours so that she can read. And he did.
That's Emily.
I think he made her a snack and he got out of the house. Yeah.
Any husband out here that, especially when she was a stay-at-home mom, any husband out here that actually wants to, like, I want to do something kind for my wife. I would come home from work and Emily was with the kids, and you can just tell that she's just, like, this has been a day. Yeah. And I say, I'm going to pour you a glass of wine. I want you to go take a bath. And
I love that.
What more could you want unless you don't drink, but what more could you want as a stay-at-home mom? Like, you're going to take this craziness for the next hour and just let me go decompress. Like, that is the biggest sacrifice. Like, that's love. Like, that's,
I love it. Do you want to hear my
So-
sister's? She's a stay-at-home mom.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And her heaven on earth would be if her husband said, "Here's some money to buy yourself an iced coffee. Go walk the aisles of Target for as long as you want. And come home
Yes.
whenever you feel like it." And I think that would be like a mini vacation. That's
Is
her happy
that
place.
not,
That's all it takes.
like,
yeah.
Who is this man? I need to know, him so I can send him. I'm
Yeah.
going to send him a great job, sir.
Yeah.
Like you're doing
Winning.
the work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're winning. And you know what? When two people can do that for each other, I mean, good Lord, we don't have to
Yeah.
make relationships so hard.
No.
But just find somebody who wants you to go get a nice coffee and walk Target. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. One evening. Not all the
Yeah.
time. One evening every now and
Yeah.
then. Yeah.
you know what's so sad is I've been stay-at-home dad now for so long that like it's hard for me to even imagine like what do I want? Like what do
Oh,
I
that's
want?
very sad.
Like,
would you like to
I've
do
been-
that
I've
right
been
here
no,
with
it
all
would
the
take too long.
listeners? Are you
I would be
serious?
I'd be like, oh my gosh. I would be like,
Just Happy Gilmore it real quick and go to your happy place in your head. And what does that look like?
Well, for me, I'm a huge fan of tennis. So so I would be, but Emily doesn't play tennis, so she wouldn't be involved in this.
I think that's hey, well, like I said, I had that friend who just wanted to be left
Yeah.
alone. Your happy place
But
doesn't
I would
necessarily have your partner in it.
Yeah, but don't worry, Emily would be involved in the
Got
later
it.
aspects of the happy place.
Right.
So really, just tennis and that. You know, I'm a simple man. You know.
So
I
it would
want
be
some time. I want some time to read. Do you see all these books that I have to read? For all of you guys, I'm trying to better myself, and instead I'm wiping butts and making lunches
yeah.
and breaking up fights when I could be doing some valuable reading to help people
Yeah.
and myself. I need it just as much as anyone else does. So so my time would be tennis, and then some good time
Some
for
reading time. Cool.
some reading time, and then obviously some time
with your partner
Emily.
alone. Yeah, got it. We get it. Yeah. All right. Cool.
without children.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love it.
And her actually, obviously being into it as well.
Yes, I think
That
that
into-
goes
that
without
goes into
saying.
yeah, that goes without saying. It's
Yeah.
not. I'm not a selfish. You know.
cool.
Well, anyways, I don't want to feel. Would you like to share?
Oh,
No one's listening anymore. So
Yeah. Oh no, that's okay. Well, this is the end. I think we can be a little more candid at the end, right?
Yeah.
Let me see. My happy place definitely would be. Oh, I love our walks. I mean, anybody who's watching on my
you guys have
Instagram
the
page,
best
we have the
walks.
best walks. So there's definitely a walk involved. Food that I don't have to cook. I don't care if he cooks it. I don't need him to cook it.
Obviously,
I actually
yeah.
love it when the restaurant cooks it. That's food that
Yeah.
I don't have to cook. And then
Yeah.
maybe like a really good movie. I would like that with some snuggling.
Yeah.
That would be great. Like
I love that.
yeah, like
It's
that.
such simple pleasures.
That's
Isn't
it.
that so wonderful?
That's it.
Yeah.
Like I don't need a trip to Paris. Just like
Right.
get me a Christopher Nolan movie, and right. That's
Oh my gosh.
That's-
now we're going to talk about Christopher. What's your favorite Christopher Nolan
we
movie?
we're cutting this right. This one doesn't.
No.
It's Inception. It's Inception.
Okay.
It's Inception.
I love Inception. Ken, have you seen Memento? Because that's the only
I
one I
love
feel like I
Memento.
haven't seen.
You haven't
don't
seen
tell me.
Memento?
I
Go-
haven't.
go
Okay.
see Memento.
I've been trying to
a
see
treat.
it, and I'm so cheap that I won't like rent it for the $5 on Amazon.
It's less than $5 right now, Jimmy. That movie is from like the 90s, isn't it? It's like a 2001.
Yeah, but I thought I could find it for free somewhere, and I haven't been able to. So
Oh,
you're
that's
gonna you're gonna have to send me for my birthday. You're gonna have to send me that DVD. You'll be like,
Maybe I will.
Here you go.
I don't have DVDs anymore, but maybe I'll.
I don't even have a DVD player.
And I'll Venmo you $5, and you can.
Oh my gosh!
You can
great
stream
idea.
Memento.
That's a great idea. You're gonna subject is Memento.
Yeah, it's a good
no,
one.
I love his movies. Obviously.
You
know what I haven't seen is Dunkirk. Have you seen that?
I didn't see that one yet. I wanted to. Yeah, I know.
And you call yourself a Nolan
Well,
fan.
I know, but it's a war movie, and I find war very like a little. It's kind of disturbing. I don't like watching
Things
war
to
stuff.
learn about Ricky.
Yeah,
this
but
is
the
wonderful.
War movies upset me. They make me sad. So
As they should. War is
as they
terribly
should. War
sad.
is horrible, especially
It is
as I when I became a parent of a boy. I think
Ugh.
it made it
Right.
way harder for me to watch war movies, because then all of a sudden every single one of the soldiers was my grown-up son, and I
Oh my gosh! Especially in World War II, they're like
I
18
know.
years old.
No,
I'm
don't
like,
even.
Good Lord.
Yeah, that's when I think when I had Carter was when I stopped watching war
Yeah.
movies for sure.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention what I at least thought Chris's happy place was, because it's important for us to know.
I love that.
Me cooking him a meal because it wouldn't
Why
be
does
a
everything revolve around
restaurant. I
cooking?
know, he says that's his stomach's
I
the way
love
to his
this.
heart, you know.
As most men
As
are.
most men are. So me putting effort to make a delicious meal for him, probably a really difficult hike. And I live in
I
live in
love hike. I
Alaska,
wish I
guys.
could go with him.
Just so you know, like I did one of these hikes the other day, and
Yeah.
I think it was 3,000 feet.
I don't know what that
even
means, but I'm gonna imagine it was hard.
Okay, a
It's half a mile
3,000
up,
foot mountain. Yeah, it was a 10-mile hike and 3,000 feet. And I tried to quit no less than 8 times. And I was,
That is so funny.
and making it to the top of a mountain with him, being an adventure buddy for a
Was
day.
it joyful, Ricky? Was it joyful?
It was not joyful. There were tears, Jimmy. It was so hard. It was so hard. But me putting effort like that, he appreciates that. So that's a happy
I wish
place
I could
for
go
him.
on a hike with him, but I don't.
You can't come
I live
on
in
up.
Florida, and it's as flat as can
You
be
guys
over
don't
here.
you'd probably flip out if you just saw the mountains up here. But
Oh yeah,
yeah, hey, come on up, bring the crew.
I can't
We'll
wait
take
to
you
go.
on
Yeah,
a 10-mile, 3,000 foot hike. And
you can stay home and cook him some chili.
Oh my
while we're
gosh, it'll
gone.
be the best chili ever. If I knew that cooking would get me out of 3,000 foot hikes, yes,
I love
I
that.
would give that chili with the most joyful heart ever.
Well, I really hope that we were helpful today.
Yeah.
I can cut any of this that we want. So if you think of anything that you wanted to add, then
Yeah.
I can slice it in right now. But otherwise,
see.
I really hope that this was marginally helpful.
I hope it was at least entertaining at the end, maybe.
I had a great time.
I had a great
mean,
time as well. I guess maybe just to summarize everything,
Yeah.
rather than accusing our partner of some terrible, monstrous transformation, we know now that there are other ways to look at it. There are tools for addressing the situation. And if the relationship's not that serious or kind of new, it might be worth looking elsewhere for love.
Yeah,
How about that?
because you deserve to be
Mutual
prioritized. You deserve to be
effort.
valued. You deserve mutual effort.
Yeah.
And if you're truly emotionally available, if you know, no, I'm not operating from a place of fear, I'm truly trying to be emotionally available, then you deserve someone to be reciprocating that. Can I say one more thing?
Please do.
This is a quote from the great Julie Manano
Oh.
that I butcher every time, but I'm going to try not to butcher it. Okay. Like, essentially what she says is, it's always beneficial when you change your relationship in a more positive and healthy direction. That doesn't mean your partner is going to reciprocate your needs. It doesn't mean that they are going to change. But when you change you can still change the relationship to be healthier. Even if it ends up not surviving, that was still a healthy change.
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah. So it only takes one to change a relationship towards a healthier direction. Remember that, 'cause we can still, we don't need them to make this relationship healthier.
What an
We can-
important
we can,
distinction.
Yeah.
Like our boy Stan says, right? It does take two with mutual effort to make a healthy
Yes.
relationship, but like Julie says, it only takes one person to change things.
And she says a changed relationship is much more likely to eventually be healthy. Now,
That was verbatim. You didn't
Yeah.
butcher that at all. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
definitely her quote. I love it.
Yeah.
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 How hopeful.
and that's still, and within that, we can still set our boundaries, and we can still choose to walk away when things are unsafe, especially when we're dating. Don't waste your time for years and years and years
Yeah.
pretending to be fine when you're not. You know.
I love it.
Anyways.
This was a good one. This was
I think it
another
was a good one.
for the books, I think.
Another one for the books. Please let us know if you made it this far. Send us a message if you have any future topics.
Topic requests and
Yeah, we love to.
yeah, feedback on if certain topics are more helpful than others. If anything that
Yeah.
we've said has made an actual impactful change in your relationship, Jimmy and I eat that stuff up. You can message
Absolutely.
us on Instagram or TikTok, or I'm on
Email.
Threads now. Apparently, I don't know.
Good
Is
for
there no?
you.
There's no DM there. So thread me. I guess I don't know how long that platform's going to be around, but if I'm there, so you can message on any of those
Yeah.
places, and we will
Yeah.
respond.
Absolutely. I might not get a mess. I might not get, like, if you comment on a video, but if you send me an email, my email's all over the place. jimmyonrelationships@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. I will respond to all of this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have to for some reason. So you found a loophole.
Hey, email is a little more urgent than the DMs too. I guess, should I throw mine out? It's Ricky, RIKKI, at Close Creative, which is CLOOS creative.com. So if you send me an email there, I'm definitely going to respond. Now that doesn't mean
And if you want to learn more about the Anxious Hearts Guide,
oh,
you can pick
there's
up
my
Ricky's,
book.
one of Ricky's many books.
Yeah, that's right. If you feel like you're suffering from anxious attachment, I would love to I would love to help you through my book, The Anxious Hearts Guide. I guess as long as we're plugging each other's stuff, Jimmy's TikTok channel is still pretty much the only one that I watch. His skits are delightful, and I always learn something every time they pop up. I stick around for the entire, some of them are quite long, but I'm there. Me and Frank, we're watching the whole thing. So
I love that. I try to keep them as short as I can, but some of them are long.
You've got a lot to say, Jimmy. You don't have to apologize for that.
Gosh, don't I ever.
Okay.
What I'm going to do next, one day I'm just going to interview you so I can be quiet and just listen.
Oh, we should, that would be a fun future episode.
Yeah.
That would maybe
totally do it.
That would be a really fun future episode, actually. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you. We'll see you guys
next time.